hello, and good Friday evening to everybody in East Central. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications, Brandon Oliver, and we have a special edition, Facebook and YouTube Live tonight for our community. Some of you may have heard the news, but we are going to have some COVID-19 testing here on campus. So we brought on the two, main players of this whole thing that are going to tell us everything we need to know about it. But first, I want to bring on the principal of East Central High School, Shane McKay. Shane, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having this opportunity for us, Mr. Oliver, to just kind of speak with our parents and our community about this exciting opportunity we have to make sure that our students and our staff feel safe and our parents feel safe, allowing their children to return to school. And so it's another layer of our risk mitigation protocols that we're putting forward that is really going to help benefit and help us to promote student learning.
Definitely. And of course, we got the educational piece, right? We got the educational piece with Mr. McKay, but we got the medical piece as well with the top nurse, the top RN here at East Central ISD, Jalen Hart. Ms. Hart, how are you doing today?
I'm great.
All right. So you're ready for this? This is, I would say, a long time coming, a long time in 2020 terms. It seems like, 2 years, 4 or 5 months seems like 2 years, but this is a long time coming of having COVID-19 testing here on campus.
Yeah, I would agree. I was going to let Jalen take the ball and run with it there, but yeah, like I said, we're really excited. I want to be clear. It is voluntary for students and staff, but we are highly encouraging it. We are going to be starting with a smaller subset of students to pilot until we get the routines down. And I'll be happy to get into more of the weeds and the details sooner. I know that we've got some FAQs that we're going to go over with you, Mr. Oliver, to make sure that our parents and students are aware of what it's going to look like. But we are going to start with our student groups who are actively participating or about to start their seasons, as well as any of our students who go off campus. An example would be our teacher prep programs, where they're actually going to the elementary schools, or they're heading out in our medical programs. They're heading out to nursing homes and dentistry offices. We want to make sure that they get tested weekly to have this opportunity. So we've partnered with an amazing organization called Community Labs. They have been doing this testing in the city of San Antonio, actually in Somerset ISD, for the better part of 6 weeks. They've learned a lot through this process, and we're ready to deploy here at East Central. It's a very simple process for our students and our staff. It's not the brain scrubber that has been known to be out there. And so long story short, the whole idea is to help our families and our parents to feel safe, allowing their students to come back to school, as well as to participate in the extracurriculars that many of them participate in as well.
All right, so you definitely already addressed what is Community Labs, and actually we have someone from Community Labs that just joined us right now.
Yay.
Kat, are you there? Yes, you are. I see you. Hello, Kat. Can you hear us?
Hello, how's it going, everyone? Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So
Perfect.
the first question was, what is Community Labs? And Kat, you're obviously the best one to tell us what is Community Labs.
Yes, it's a great question. So Community Labs is a nonprofit organization to help support organizations and schools like yourself to suppress the spread of COVID. So we are seeing that asymptomatic spreaders are 50% the reason why people are testing positive for COVID. And so we decided that there is a need, and we need to help suppress it and open our communities and be a little bit safer. So that is the reason why we were founded. And so our founder, Graham Weston, or one of the founders, Graham Weston, he brought his son back over from Europe at the beginning of the pandemic, and he brought his son back over. His son was actually a silent spreader, and so Graham fell terribly ill. And luckily, he is doing really, really well. But he found that there was a need to go ahead and find these silent spreaders, and so that is what Community Labs is all about.
All right. So next question. We already talked about the process a little bit. But has anyone else done this kind of screening? Is the test at the Community Labs using a new test?
Kat, do you want to answer that?
Has anyone else done? Yes. I'm just going to reiterate the question. So, is the test the Community Labs using a new test? So, it is the gold standard PCR test. So, our accuracy is %, and it is just the test. But the reason why we're able to capture the virus that's alive in the system. So that's what the important piece is that 95% accuracy. But it's just your normal, and it's actually a frontal nasal swab. So you just swab around, and it is just PCR testing.
All right, Shane, Jalen, anything y'all want to add on to that? I know we were breaking up a little bit there too.
Yeah, the first part is, has anyone done this kind of screening? So Community Labs did partner with Somerset ISD, and Somerset ISD has been doing this for the better part of 6 weeks. They've also recently partnered with Trinity University, and they're going to also be doing the testing at Trinity. And I understand several other local ISDs are getting ready to get on board as well, utilizing Community Labs. So we're still up on the front end of it, like we always hope to be at eCentral, but it has been piloted in another district before us.
And then how much does this cost?
Okay, so I'll say it's free. It actually costs.
It's actually free for the students. All the students.
Cat's on a small delay there.
Can you hear us, Kat?
What was that?
Okay, you're up. You got the ball. So how much does it cost? You were broke up.
All right, Shane, just go ahead and take this one.
Yeah, so it is free for the students and the staff. It does actually have a cost of $35 a test. And what I can say about that is thankfully through philanthropic efforts, it is being fully funded by another person. And so we're just really excited to have this opportunity for it to be no cost to our students and our staff for this process. So, I understand it's the former owner of Rackspace that is funding this so school districts can open safely. So free.
Well, can't beat that, right?
No.
So our kids have been out of school for a long time. Why are we just starting this now?
Well, what I can say too is even with Community Labs, they're still fairly new at this, and as well as I think we've had a lot to learn in reopening schools, but learning from what other districts and other areas are doing, and just trying to do our best to make sure that if we do it, we've got a good game plan, and then also make sure that it has been vetted. And I can say that this current test that's out there was created by MIT and Harvard in partnership with UT Health. So we feel very confident in it, and also think it's one of the newer tests that it has a 95% accuracy rate. And so if we would have gone into it a little too early, we may not have had as good a results or the most proper information or the most accurate information that we could have had.
All right, and I do want to stress to our viewers that we will Oh man, the lights went on, Jalen there. That we will answer questions from the viewers. We have a few like pre-sorted questions that we're answering first, then we'll jump right in. I see Michelle, Raider Nation, Kathy Ferris. I see you all answering your questions. So if you could just hold on for just a few more minutes and we'll jump onto those. The results, will they stay private?
Absolutely. Parents of students will get an email notifying them that results have come in, and then they'll have access to the system that reports the results to the students and their families. And there's just a limited amount of people here on campus that have access to the results. And we will follow up with parents if we do end up with any positives and give them instructions on what they need to do as a family.
All right. And so what makes the screening process different? We've all seen I haven't had a COVID test, but for those that have, or, have seen pictures of it, you see the swab go way up the nose. So, tell us about the screening process. How will it work? How is it different?
Well, I can answer that question. We started testing last Monday here at the Newcastle High School. And so we got to see firsthand, how the test is administered. It's a self-administered test. So students come in, they have an order sheet that they hand the technician. The technician verifies that that is the student. They'll go over their date of birth and their name and make sure it matches the order and make sure it's the right student. The technician actually will give the student a small Q-tip. The student will pull it out of the container. The student will swab their nose with the Q-tip, 5 seconds each nostril, rolling it around their nostril. They'll do both sides. And then the student will put their Q-tip back into a test tube that will have their name and their identification on it. They'll seal it right in front of the student, and then that test tube will go to the lab where they'll run the test. It's very simple. Takes just less than a minute to do.
All right, and Kat has joined us again. Kat,
sorry guys. Yes, is it better? Is my audio better? I want to apologize. I'm in El Paso right now, so I am so sorry. We had to come for an emergency trip to do testing over here, so it's been crazy. But I do want to add, Miss Jalen explained it very, very well. So the screening process is just a little bit different. It is specific for asymptomatic screening. And that is what is so different, because right now, students, parents, faculty, as you guys go into the doctor's office, they typically ask you if you have symptoms. And if you have symptoms, it's unfortunate because that COVID test is then turned away. And so that's what's so different about our testing right now, is just because you don't have symptoms, you can now get tested. And so a lot of like Texas Med, Walgreens, CVS, they are specifically asking if you have symptoms, and that's how you are able to get your COVID test. And it's great having this option for the school districts, because having your students come back into the space, they are asymptomatic because they're not supposed to have symptoms coming onto campus. And it's just that reassurance of feeling okay as your students are coming back onto the space and in that face-to-face learning.
All right, so let's talk about release forms. Do I have to sign one for my kid?
Absolutely.
I was going to say, yes, we do. We need consent forms. We would not just test your student or faculty. We would not test you without your consent. So there is a consent form that Ms. Jalen and principal has for you available. And so that should be sent out. Jalen, Principal Shane, if you have anything.
Yeah, we gave them to all of the coaches who do in the programs that we're going to start testing with on Monday. So they've passed those out to those student athletes. We even issued an electronic version. So if any of the student athletes and or student groups weren't able to be on campus to receive those over the last few days, they can then send it out to them electronically. Students, we did ask that they return them by today, but we are going to allow them to come on Monday with their release form already signed, and we'll get them in to get them tested. And again, we're starting small with only approximately about 800 students, and then our staff to also be tested. So we will be branching out to other student programs, and as we get closer to the spring, then the goal will be to ultimately open it up to all students in our school, and then eventually working with Ms. Hart and the other campus principals, moving to all the other campuses across the district.
All right, and again, before we get to the next question, we only have a couple more pre-formatted questions, and I promise we're going to go right down the line and ask everybody's questions, including the people that have angry faces. We want to make those angry faces happy faces. So, just stand by. We will get to that. All right. So, this is voluntary. Is it mandatory? What is going on? What if I refuse to be screened?
Well, I'll take that question. So this is a voluntary screening that does require a consent form from a parent. So if the screening is not something that the family is interested in, we are not, requiring students to have the testing done.
So it is not mandatory. Okay. All right. So the next question is, let's talk about positive. What happens if I test positive? When can I come back to work or school?
That is the hot topic. What if I'm positive? So we have guidelines set out for us from Metro Health, TEA, and then CDC. So if someone's results do come back positive, they'll receive a phone call with instructions on, what they need to do. The time frame to be out of school or work is 10 days. So 10 days from the date that you tested. That's the isolation period. But we'll go over those instructions with families, and we'll check on families periodically and make sure that they're, that the student is recovering, if they end up developing symptoms or not. But it is a 10-day isolation period and a 14-day isolation period for the family members that are considered close contacts.
All right. So again, talking about, positivities, will I be notified if my child was exposed to someone who tests positive?
Absolutely. That is the protocol of the district to notify parents. If it's considered a close contact, which is that time frame of no mask, greater than 15 minutes, we would call the parent personally. Otherwise, it might just be a parent link that goes out, just informing the whole school that there was a positive on campus.
All right. And then how safe are the supplies that are used?
I can take that one. So the Q-tips or the little swabs that Miss Jalen was talking about, they are sterile and they are each packaged in their own packaging. And then like the CDC guideline, we're all wearing gloves, wearing our masks and following that guidelines. So the equipment that your students or faculty, you will go ahead and be using is just a Q-tip. And that is going to be individualized. So it is sterile and it comes in its own packaging.
All right, so we are going to jump into the questions from our viewers. Some of these that we have answered already. I'm looking at some of them, and some I could tell we've answered near the top of it, but we will get to them. All right, so Michelle wants to know right off the top, are you going to be testing our kids now? Again, I think that's more of a perception, but do y'all want to talk about that?
I'm not sure what she means by now, but the testing will occur every Monday through the end of December of this year, and only those students who have a signed consent form from with a parent consent will be tested.
And right now, like I said, we're choosing to start with certain student groups who have the most contact points with outside groups. So we're talking about our advanced CTE, or kids that are in internships and practicums that come in contact with maybe elderly or other students across the district, or those who are currently competing or getting ready to start competing in athletics. And then the ultimate goal is we want to expand and have it to be optional for every student on campus. Of course, the parent has to agree by signing the consent form. We'll be doing it in our Gary Patterson Center for the Performing Arts from 7:30 to 9:30. So those students who have already been selected, their groups, their coaches, sponsors, and their teachers have been notified. They've reached out to them to make them aware, but the ultimate goal will be to move on out to other students having the opportunity to be tested.
She also asked, is the test FDA approved?
So for the COVID-19 screening that we have, and for community labs, our screening process is actually an EUA approved. And what EUA means is it's emergency use authorization. And so in order for us with COVID and the pandemic, and because it's so rushed right now, we actually got the authorization for us to go ahead and get approved for this emergency use authorization for the screening. And so it is still a part of the Food and Drug Administration, but it's just a different process. So we're in the process of gaining a lot of different other access points, but we do have an EUA, which is emergency use authorization point.
All right. And so the next question, I'm going to do kind of like as a final, I totally understand that a lot of people are wondering this, but they're asking, is it mandatory? So is voluntary or mandatory for sports, or voluntary all the way around? I was told by my child it was mandatory for him as an athlete. Is this correct? Let's squash, this is going to be the final, is it mandatory question. And I don't mean to, to pick on any other questions. That's by far number one. Let's squash it right now.
Yep.
Is it mandatory for students or student athletes or any student group or anything?
No, it is not mandatory. It is totally voluntary. It's highly encouraged. And I think the ultimate reason why it's highly encouraged is, I don't know, my own child goes to school here as well. She's also an athlete, and I would want to know as a parent if she's potentially a carrier. I would definitely not want her to pass that to any of her teammates or her friends, but as well as knowing that her grandparents are in their 70s and at high risk. I would want to be able to know that as well. So it is all voluntary. That's why the release form is required by the parent first. It is not a condition of their participation, but again, for the betterment of their safety, for the safety of their teammates, the safety of their coaches, the safety of their parents, their family, their siblings, and the greater community, I think it's the best way to go. And in fact, I've had a couple of our staff members who also have students that go to school here, that the first thing they ask is, hey, I know that they're not a part of those student groups, but can I please have them tested? Because I don't want them to unintentionally give it to grandma who's living with us right now. So again, it is not mandatory. I'll repeat one more time. It is not mandatory. It's not a condition of your participation. So,
and it's not mandatory to even be on campus.
No,
for
ma'am.
them to be on campus.
No, ma'am.
So again, sorry y'all, but yeah, I just wanted to squash that. It is 110%, voluntary. It is not mandatory for sports, not mandatory to come on the campus, not mandatory for anything. So just wanted to squash that one. How long before they know results?
So it is next day turnaround time. So we do have the option to go ahead and test in the morning. So as soon as the lab receives those results, we are guaranteeing that the next day you will go ahead and have your results, and it's typically either via email, as long as you provide parents a parent or guardian email, and then that will be sent off as soon as the lab gets that results. It'll be sent via email.
And then as a follow-up for that, Kat, Is this a rapid RDT test?
It is not a rapid RDT test. It is still the PCR testing. And so the reason why we have a short turnaround time is because our lab capacity is it's a little bit organized. And so we're not taking other testing or screenings from other states. And so what you're seeing with, if you go to the city or if you go out of state to another testing site, that quote is typically 2 to 3 days because it's being shipped out of that city. So because the lab is local, it gives us the opportunity to turn around so fast. And that's what makes it that next day turnaround time. But it is not the rapid test. It's a PCR gold standard test.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to bring back on Jalen and Mr. McKay. So I think we're getting a lot of questions about which groups are we starting with, and Mr. McKay, if you would like to address that.
Yeah, so I'll say that any of our CTE groups, our career and technical education groups that are in their advanced practicum that are going off-site. So if they've already been or are about to go off-site, they are included. Football, freshmen through varsity level, soccer, boys and girls, freshmen through varsity level, girls and boys basketball. I believe we also have included golf and tennis and swimming have been included in those student groups. And again, we know that this will be the first week that we try it this Monday, and we know we may not have all of the release forms, and maybe parents want to see how it goes with the other student groups and if they'll be willing to allow their child to do it. But those are the groups that we identified because, again, being the first time trying to mobilize within a 2-hour window to get not only all of those student groups, but as well as our staff through the Patterson to get their screening done. We just wanted to make sure that we did it with a smaller group to start. So that's it. It's again football, freshmen through varsity, soccer, boys and girls, girls and boys basketball, freshmen through varsity level, golf, tennis, swimming, and then our CTE groups that go offsite right now. Not our CTE groups that stay on campus.
So what about the maybe the seniors that are over 18? For example, Jenny asked, my daughter is 18. Does she need my consent?
As standard, I would say, and I'm sure Kat and Ms. Hart would be happy to join in, but I'll say here, even on our campus, we do like to converse with the parent to make sure that they're okay with it, but an 18-year-old does have the authority to sign their consent. Even with our school district documents, if they're 18, they can sign for their own consent, even outside of this. So yes, your daughter who is 18 can sign for her own consent.
And again, I know we addressed the pay at the beginning of this, but who's paying for the testing? Do kids need to show some kind of insurance?
No insurance required. It's already paid for by a generous donor. Let's just say that.
Let's see. So, again, mom is asking, so if I refuse to give consent to a test, which again, this is a voluntary test. This is only voluntary. So if I refuse to give consent, my children can still come to school.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So here's a technical question. In your initial testing, what is the percentage of asymptomatic positives you have found?
Oh, that's such a great question. So with Somerset ISD was our first school district that we did testing with. And the positive rate within the 4 weeks that we initially kind of did a trial run with them, the 4 weeks we had, I believe we had 3 positives. And so our percentage of positive rates was very, very low. It's actually lower than typically what was the city's highest point. I think their positive rate was about 10%. So our percentage of positivity rate was less than 5 with our first ISD. And then as we brought on more organizations that were testing, for example, Geekdom, a co-working space here in town, they also are doing the screening as well. and they actually had no positives. So we are seeing that there are no positives at first, but as everyone can see is that the surge for COVID positivity rate is increasing right now. So we do anticipate that that percentage at the very beginning when we first started with Somerset ISD will not be the case this go around. So we are anticipating a little bit more of an increase in our positivity rate.
And then I think we'll address this, but what is the accuracy of the testing?
So it's above 95% accuracy of the testing, which is why it is the PCR gold standard test.
All right. And then will they be, do you know if they'll be tested more than once?
To my knowledge, it is a weekly testing. So it will be occurring every single week on Monday. Principal McKay said it was going to be at 7:30 in the morning. So it'll be first thing in the morning every week on Monday until the fall break of the end of December.
And then for those students that are 18 and sign the consent form themselves, will the parents still receive the results?
So the consent form, since they sign it themselves, they are providing their guardian email. So they are themselves their guardian. If you would like to have the parent email instead of the student's email, then definitely make that change on that consent form. So it has been both ways where the student will receive that result, and then we have had where a parent will receive that result instead. So make sure your students are checking your email. If you are above 18, if they do not check their email, then I would highly encourage that the parent or guardian email is then on the consent form.
All right, so we do have a few more questions. We're very inquisitive here at East Central ISD. Sarah asks, if a student finds out that they had an exposure, can they get tested at the high school instead of going to the med clinic?
Go ahead, Kat. You look like you were going to say something.
I know. I thought you were going to say something too. So for community labs in general, we want to make this available to the face-to-face learners that are on campus. And so that being said, it is going to be on a certain day at a specific time. So there wouldn't be another date or time that student could come to the campus and get tested. So I would assume that if the student finds out, for example, on Friday that they have had an exposure, to follow your campus's guidelines on whether that is going to be self-quarantine or that is going to be returned to campus. And then if they do return to campus, I would assume that they would still get tested on Monday, which is fine. But I would leave it up to Principal McKay, whatever your student guideline is, with if a student feels that they have been exposed to COVID, what that looks like for the campus.
And what about kids at other schools, our middle schools, elementary schools? Can they get tested?
So not at this time. We are rolling this out at the high school. We've got a certain amount of tests allotted to the district currently. And so we're starting with the high school, and we'll add more numbers as the weeks go by. We're also limited on funding. So, taking all of that into play, the decision was made to start here, like Mr. McKay had said, with some of those groups that have a little bit more contact in different areas. We felt like that was the best decision.
And if people haven't, or if there's kids that haven't gotten the consent form, how do they get one?
So I'll work with Coach Areola and Coach Hubbard. We did send it out electronically to the staff. We'll make sure that they can send it out to you guys as well, and either put it on their website so you can access it and fill it out, or email it to you directly. So I will, as soon as we get done with this Facebook Live, I'll give Coach Hubbard and Coach Areola a call and ensure that we can get that to you guys.
Who decides what close contact is and the time frame? Will the person be questioned on contact information if they come back positive?
So that's a great question. So all of our nurses in the district completed the contact tracing course offered by Johns Hopkins University. It's a great course. Anybody can take it. And we've been diligently trying to do contact tracing with all of the positives that are coming, that are being reported to us, because we want to keep our kids safe. We want to make sure that, those who have been here with that student, are safe, and their families are safe. And so we've been very thorough with talking with teachers and, finding out what's going on in the classroom, if it's a sport, looking to see where practice is and what time and who interacts at what practice. We've even had coaches watch football tapes and add up minutes of when the student played. How long are kids eating? And our campuses have done a wonderful job of making sure that kids are still, are social distance and that they're wearing their masks. They're very good at redirecting kids and helping them to stay, within those guidelines, so that we can, again, guarantee that, or at least try to make sure that everybody's safe when they're here on campus. And we try to do that within 24 hours. Sometimes that time frame is a little challenging based on when we're notified of a positive result, but we do try to make sure that we're getting that contact tracing done in a timely manner, and then getting people notified if there are close contacts, and then giving them instructions on what they need to do.
So here's an interesting question. Why can't we make it mandatory?
Well, Mr. McKay, answer that.
I saw Kat's lips moving. I thought she was going to say something.
I was just saying it was a great question.
That is a great question, and for when thinking about it, the ultimate thing is in this type of environment, currently where we're at, to force students, or to mandate that students take it. Everybody has a different comfort level with privacy information and sharing some of that. So again, I just go back to the idea was to start with it being voluntary, for the fact that we want to be able to respect people's privacy and let it be ultimately people's decision on how they proceed to do it. Again, it's not a mandated thing, but right now, if they were professional athletes, or if they were getting paid to do that, and I can see it, like the college and pro guys, they're making millions of dollars, not only for the university but for themselves, possibly if they're in the pros. I can see wanting to make sure that they're all maintaining their health and doing that kind of testing, but ultimately still knowing that we want to respect people's privacy and give them the option to decide to do that or not. And we hope that they decide to do the right thing and to be tested, but obviously we can't force kids to do it.
Right. And that mandate would probably come from someone not directly at East Central High School. I mean, it would come from it
would have to be, if UIL mandated that all kids, as a condition of participation, would have to, it's like many years ago, they did steroid testing. That mandate came from UIL guidelines. So it would have to come from higher authorities, that if we were to continue to play, then they would say that districts would be required, or students would be required to. But right now, there is no required mandate.
Right. It would be pretty difficult for one school district, to make it mandatory. I just want to make that clear, so that way people don't think, oh, it's an East Central thing. It's not. Yeah. So, and again, students can be tested more than once, right? Mm-hmm. If they come out as asymptomatic, how long do they have to be out? I know symptoms can stick around longer.
So the guidelines are 10 days. So based on your test date, say you tested today, then it would be today plus 10 days, and then you could return basically on the 12th day is what it would be. I don't want to confuse anybody though, 10 days. And then what we have done with cases in the district is our nurses follow up with families. So after a couple of days, calling and just finding out how they're doing, making sure they're on target to return. especially as we get closer to that, the end of their isolation, they'll call and just find out how they're doing. If they haven't had any symptoms, then they're great to return. If they're having any symptoms, we might, depending on what they're having, we might ask them to see a physician. But according to Metro Health, once you've gone through your isolation 10-day period, you're not considered contagious. There are people who have had lingering symptoms, very mild symptoms. But research, what we know is that once you satisfy that 10-day isolation, you're good to go out and do your thing, go back to work, go back to school.
And then Michelle has some homework for me. She asked, can I please post on the school website the lab's accredited certification and the PCR application for FDA approval status? My apologies, but these are the same questions I ask in my daily job. I think that's, can we get those, Kat, and can we post them on the website?
Yeah, absolutely.
I did want to, I got the video up, hold on. I did want to show everybody real quick. If you go to ecisd.net/health, and I'm going to share my screen with you all. Oh, it's not working out the way I wanted it to. Hold on just a second. I wonder why it's doing that. Let's try this. Okay. So if you go to ecisd.net/health, and over here to the left in the menu bar, you'll find community labs on there. And if you click on the community labs tab, you'll find this really short, great video about community labs, and then basically the frequently asked questions that we asked tonight. And then we'll also put up that information that Michelle requested. So again, that's ecisd.net/health. You might want to give us to like Monday or Tuesday, Michelle, please. But we will be gladly to put that up on the website. So, and again, I'm getting a lot of the questions where students are remote, but they only come to campus for practice or only to play for a game or playing band or something like that. Can you still go get tested on Monday mornings?
Yeah, so that was part of the reason why we chose the time that we did. We do know that for our kids that are remote, that are only coming on campus to compete, and then they go back home to do their learning, they can come on campus. They can park either down in Gym 3, let's say they drive themselves, or they can park over at the tennis courts, walk across the street, go into the back door of the Patterson, get in line, get their order, get tested, step right out, go back to their vehicle, drive back home for class. If it's a parent that's going to bring them up, they can literally pull through the front drive right there at the front of the school. Their child can get out, go into the back. They can go over and park, like I said earlier, they can park in Gym 3 parking, or they can park over at the tennis courts. Their child can text them when they're done or call them when they're done, drive back around over the front circle, pick them up and head them back home. So we do know that we have students that are on remote learning, but they only come up for athletics, or they only come up for practice. And so we, again, want to offer that up even for those students during that window, during the asynchronous time before classes actually start. And some of those programs actually go into first period, so that the reason why it goes till 9:30 is if they are in first period athletics, they can now go into their class to go get tested with their, of course, coach's permission, and they've got their consent form. Then they can go do that and then go get cleaned up for school the rest of the day, or head to their vehicle and drive home, or get picked up and go straight home for classes.
And so if, and I saw this question, it scrolled by, but, if you have an ECHS student who isn't in band, who isn't an athlete, who isn't in some of these groups, can they still get tested?
Yeah, like we said, we're just starting with these groups to learn and to get better at it. And the ultimate goal is we do want to offer it up for all students to have this option. Again, we are on a pressing timeline because we just have right now to the end of this year. But as we continue, hopefully we'll get the opportunity and we can open it up for the entire student body.
All right, we'll do one last question, y'all. And I like this one. If having a teenager stick something up their nose is anything like getting them to put eye drops in, how confident are we they'll swab correctly? Will the technician guide them?
That's a great question. Yes. So the technician, my team will be sitting there with students and staff that will be able to explain how to swab. And it's very, very simple. It's just like picking your nose. And I do reference that a lot. And so hopefully that helps with your teenager or even faculty. I know we all do it. It's okay. And so we are excited to go ahead and help guide your teenagers to swab their nose, and we will definitely be there to help guide and ensure that we are getting a correct and a valid sample.
All right, so I lied. There's two questions that popped up. All right, one says, once a student or employee fills out the form, do we have to refill out the form weekly, or is once it's on file, they're good to go every week?
That's correct. So once it's on file, it's on file. So we just need the consent form one time.
And then this is the last one. Can I write a note for my son to get tested because he's in ROTC and band?
Right now, we're still not ready for ROTC and band or the other students. Like I said, we picked these smaller groups just to get the practice in and get familiar with the procedures, and then ultimately, like I said, the goal is to open up to the other student groups and other students on campus. So we're not there yet. Give us a few weeks.
All right. So that will bring the end to the question and answers. Again, thank you so much for your time tonight. I know you went about 20 minutes longer than you were supposed to, but I appreciate your time. Any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up? Anybody?
Kat or
Let me
David?
just say something. Let me just say, we appreciate the support of the community and the families that we have here at East Central. Our goal is just to make sure that everybody's protected and safe while they're here. And so we really appreciate, students coming to school with their masks on and following directions, and all those people that are doing their daily screeners every day. We appreciate you. And if you have any questions, just get in contact with us, and we'll, answer those questions individually if we need to. Thank you.
I'll just add, we're just so grateful for East Central ISD to be a part of this initiative. And we're really excited to help your students feel safe when returning to campus for face-to-face learning, and then also for faculty to feel safe with their students as well. So that's our overall goal, is to make the community feel safe in this time. And it's a very scary time, but we're trying to help alleviate some of that fear. And we are just sticking together as a community. And I just really appreciate all of the work that East Central is doing. And specifically Principal McKay and Jalen, you guys have been absolutely amazing. And we're looking forward to bringing on more schools and bringing on more students to help make this community a little bit safer.
And I'll just echo the gratitude that Kat and Jalen have so eloquently expressed to our families and our parents in the community for trusting us. Part of this is nothing more to add another layer to our risk mitigation protocols, because we know that face-to-face learning is the best way for us to help students reach their maximum and full potential. We do have some students that are doing really, really well in remote learning, but we always know that we can augment and supplement their learning with much greater energy when they're here on campus, because we're able to make the adjustments we need to. So we want our parents and we want our students, we want our staff to feel safe in allowing our students to come back to school for face-to-face learning. And then also, I know as a parent that has a child that goes to school here and that participates, I also want to know that they're safe amongst their teammates and they're safe amongst their coaches and their teachers when they're here. So again, the ultimate goal behind this is to make sure that we stop the silent spreading, that we try to have early prevention or early detection, so therefore we can communicate effectively and do our very best to make sure that everybody just feels safe, allowing their child to come to school every single day. And we want our students to feel safe and want our staff to feel safe. And this is another layer that we feel like is going to help to supplement that. And we know that if students feel safe when they come to school, when staff feels safe when they come to work, we're at our best, and real learning can occur. And that's what we're really here to do. We're committed to that.
And Mr. McKay, just on the flip side, if things, if there is another wave, if there is, if there is cause for us to, pull back and say, there's a, outbreak, or, the cases are just gone, we're more than capable of being pulled back and saying, hey, okay, we're going back to remote learning, or, that sort of thing, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah. We currently have had the stages for our emergency schedule, and we can always roll back if we need to. We had the group 1 and group 2, or the gold and black groups. We can always roll back into those when we need to minimize the number of students that are on campus at any time. And if we had to scale back into remote learning, we're definitely agile enough and could toggle to that as on a moment's notice. Our teachers have been working really hard, and our students have been learning how to learn in a remote setting and how to stay organized in that fashion. So absolutely, we're hoping to stay open and hoping to stay face-to-face, and
Sure.
that all is very, very dependent upon how everybody in their personal lives follows those same levels of risk mitigation protocols. I know that's something we preach a lot with our staff, that we want to be as disciplined in our personal life as we are in our professional lives when we're here at work. And if we can continue to do that as a community and look out for the betterment of my family and my friends and the greater community by following the guidelines, we can definitely do that, and we can do it safely. And we can do it in a manner that's very respectful of others in our community.
All right. Mr. McKay, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
And East Central ISD, thank you very much for tuning in. And we hope that we answered a lot of your questions, and we'll see how this goes. And we're hopeful that one day, Mr. McKay, everybody will come back to school. May not be soon, but one day, right?
Yep, we're excited about it.
So, all right, everybody, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next Facebook Live.